The opening scene is set in a mental institution where a teenage girl named Soo-mi is undergoing treatment for shock and psychosis. The doctor tries to talk to her by showing her family photographs, but the traumatized girl remains silent. The doctor then inquires about her experiences leading to her hospitalization, but she gives no response. The scene then cuts to a few days later when Soo-mi returns to her family's isolated countryside residence with her father, Moo-hyun, and her younger sister, Soo-yeon. Upon their arrival, both sisters hesitate to enter as they hate their stepmother, Eun-joo. As a result, they head down to a pier by the lake and enjoy some fresh air. A short while later, they are summoned back to the house, where they are greeted by Eun-joo's feigned welcome. Though she pretends to be pleasant, the two sisters remain unresponsive and walk upstairs to their room. Inside her room, Soo-mi starts unpacking and arranging her belongings, only to discover that there is already an exact same diary on her desk. She is further surprised to find clothes with the same design in her closet, appearing as if she isn't allowed to wear other patterned clothes. Later on, the family gathers for dinner, but the atmosphere remains quiet. Eun-joo eventually breaks the silence by announcing that she has invited her brother and his wife to dinner the next day. However, nobody appears interested in this, and even the father hastily finishes his meal to leave. Soo-mi then expresses her disapproval of dining with her stepmother's brother. With this, she leaves the dining table, followed by her sister. As they make their way to their room, Soo-mi, who is protective of her younger sister, asks her to confide in her if their stepmother ever bothers her. Following this, everyone retires to their respective beds. Moo-hyun seems uncomfortable sharing a bed with Eun-joo, so he goes to sleep on the living room sofa instead. This highlights the strained relationship between the two of them. At the stroke of midnight, Soo-yeon is awakened by a strange noise coming from outside her room. Soon after, the door creaks open, revealing a woman's hand, slowly extending inward. Overwhelmed by fear, Soo-yeon swiftly hides herself under the blanket, but the blanket gradually tugs away as well. Moments later, the door suddenly slams shut, freaking the girl out. As a result of this, she runs to Soo-mi's room and confides in her. Hearing the incident, Soo-mi walks downstairs to check, but only sees the television broadcasting static. She also finds her father asleep on the sofa and takes a moment to adjust his blanket. Just then, her stepmother shows up from the shadows, telling her not to disturb him. However, Soo-mi starts an argument and abruptly leaves. She then consoles her sister with a comforting hug, and the two fall asleep. During the early hours of morning, Soo-mi is plagued by a nightmarish vision involving her dead mother. Upon awakening, she is confronted by a horrifying apparition, a long-haired woman who crawls along the ground. The spectral figure becomes aware of Soo-mi's gaze, so she stands to face her. With Soo-mi frozen in fear, the woman starts to approach her. The ghostly figure hovers with blood trickling from her leg, and a hand abruptly emerges from beneath her dress. Just then, Soo-mi snaps out of it and realizes that everything was just a dream. Shortly after, she notices blood stains on her bedding as well as on her sister's shorts, indicating that they are on their periods. In order to get the sanitary pads, Soo-mi heads to her stepmother's room, where she discovers that Eun-joo is also menstruating. It is a bit strange that the three women in the house have synchronized their menstrual cycles on the same day. Is it though? Afterwards, the two sisters are on the balcony, whistling their biological mother's favorite melody. In the midst of this, they are approached by their father, who tells them not to stay outside, as it's cold. Soo-mi broaches the topic of getting rid of Soo-yeon's wardrobe, but her father reminds her that they have agreed not to talk about that. The relationship between father and daughter appears to be cold, marked by frequent disagreements. Later in the day, Soo-mi finds some family photographs which reveal that Eun-joo was formerly an in-home nurse who had cared for their terminally ill mother prior to her passing. Just then, Soo-yeon enters the room, and the two sisters rummage through their mother's belongings together. Amidst this, Soo-mi discovers bruises on Soo-yeon's arm. She angrily asks if their stepmother did this, but the young girl refuses to answer and runs out. Determined to seek answers, Soo-mi questions Eun-joo about the injuries, but her stepmom adamantly refuses to apologize for her actions. The same night, Eun-joo's brother, Seun-kyu, along with his wife, Mi-hee, arrive for dinner. During their meal, Eun-joo cracks some insensitive jokes, creating an odd situation for everyone. Not long after, Mi-hee abruptly collapses to the ground and begins convulsing. Seun-kyu and Moo-hyun rush to her aid and eventually manage to calm her down, and once she recovers, the couple drives away. En route, Mi-hee confides in her husband, revealing that she saw the ghost of a dead girl beneath the kitchen sink during her seizure. Back at home, Eun-joo notices the sink door opening on its own. Curious, she slowly approaches and closes it. She then proceeds to inspect beneath the sink, but finds nothing amiss. Unbeknownst to her, a girl with long hair is seated at the dining table, sensing an eerie presence. Eun-joo turns around, but the girl vanishes. Just then, she spots a hair clip on the floor. Confused, she bends to pick it up, but a ghostly hand suddenly grasps her arm, scaring her heart out. She hastily retreats, but soon finds herself face to face with the girl from the dining table. She later confides in her husband, explaining that strange occurrences have been happening in the house ever since Soo-mi's return. However, Moo-hyun does not believe in her and asks her to take a rest for a while. Later on, Moo-hyun makes a grim discovery. Eun-joo's beloved pet bird has been killed inside its cage. Upon learning of this, Eun-joo storms into Soo-yeon's room in a fit of anger. There, she finds that her pictures have been torn apart, with her face deliberately scratched out. Convinced that these actions are done by the girls, she physically assaults Soo-yeon and locks her in the closet. Not long after, Soo-mi hears her sister's screams and rushes to check on her. Hearing Soo-yeon's cries from the closet, she hastily unlocks it and releases her. Soo-mi then apologizes for not being able to hear her cries sooner and vows to protect her from further harm. A short while later, their father walks in and asks Soo-mi about the reason why she's acting weirdly ever since she returned. Soo-mi tells him about Eun-joo's mistreatment towards Soo-yeon. In an unexpected turn of events, her father begs her to stop acting out and informs her that Soo-yeon is dead. However, Soo-mi refuses to accept this, as she sees her sister right next to her, sobbing uncontrollably. The following morning, Eun-joo drags a blood-stained sack through the house and starts beating it with a stick. The noise awakens Soo-mi, who then heads downstairs to investigate. Upon witnessing a trail of blood staining the floor, she believes that her sister is inside the sack. She tries to open it, but struggles in her efforts. Soon after, her stepmother appears from behind and is ready to throw boiling water on her. This incites a violent altercation between the two, during which Soo-mi hits her head on the counter and falls unconscious. Following this, Eun-joo drags her into the living room before retrieving a garden statue. As Soo-mi regains consciousness, she finds her stepmother kneeling beside her. Eun-joo claims that Soo-mi will never be able to get rid of all the painful memories from the past because Soo-yeon will follow her like a ghost. She then raises the heavy garden statue with an intention to smash it into Soo-mi's head. But fortunately, Moo-hyun arrives in the nick of time, prompting her to retreat. He notices Soo-mi lying down injured on the floor and quickly carries her to the bedroom. He then starts looking around the house for some first aid. Amidst this, he notices the messy state of his house, causing him to feel strange. He also sees some bloodied doll tied up in the sack in the closet. Shortly after, Moo-hyun finds his wife sitting on the living room couch. He gives her some medication, while also asking her to control her violent behavior. After a brief conversation, Moo-hyun exits the room. Seconds later, the room's door opens again, and a person wearing a suit enters. The camera pans to reveal that this person is none other than Eun-joo, while the one previously seated on the couch is Soo-mi. It is ultimately revealed that Soo-mi and her father were alone in the house the entire time. The scene moves to a flashback, and we are shown that Soo-mi was the one dragging the sack across the floor earlier. The content in the sack was actually a porcelain doll, and she was the one who killed the pet bird. It is further disclosed that she returned home without her sister because Soo-yeon died a long time ago. Finally, we come to learn that Soo-mi had suffered from dissociative identity disorder, in which she possessed two distinct personalities, herself and her perception of her stepmother. For some reason, she hates her stepmother a lot. As a result, the conversations and events she previously had with Soo-yeon and her stepmother were the result of her schizophrenic mind. But what about the part with Eun-joo's sister having a seizure on the floor? That was so confusing. Moreover, the portrayal of the stepmother in the earlier scene was merely a construct of Soo-mi's imagination. In the aftermath of this revelation, Soo-mi promptly takes medication in order to stabilize her emotions. After all of this, the father and the real Eun-joo take Soo-mi back to the mental institution. Eun-joo is seen waiting outside the wardroom with a worried face. After Soo-mi's checkup, she tries to offer consolation, promising to visit her as often as possible. However, Soo-mi remains silent. Later in the evening, Eun-joo is alone at home when she hears footsteps coming from Soo-yeon's old bedroom. She enters the room to investigate, only to be startled by movement behind the curtains. She proceeds to open the curtains. The door shuts from behind and the lights begin to flicker. The tension escalates as the closet door opens on its own. Upon walking closer, she is confronted with a horrifying sight. A ghostly figure crawls out and ultimately kills Eun-joo. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Soo-mi has a smile on her face, seemingly having found peace. The scene then flashes back to the time when the children's terminally ill mother was still alive. During that period, Moo-hyun was in an affair with Eun-joo, who used to serve as their in-home nurse. This betrayal devastated their biological mother, leading her to commit the unthinkable inside the closet of Soo-yeon's room. The following morning, Soo-yeon found her mother's motionless body, setting her into a panic. She tried to revive her by shaking the lifeless body, but unfortunately, this caused the closet to collapse on top of her. The little girl struggled to escape but couldn't lift the heavy closet. Hearing the loud noise, the stepmother came to check, but callously abandoned the suffocating child instead of helping. However, she had a change of heart and began to head back. Halfway though, she crossed paths with Soo-mi, who criticized Eun-joo for interfering with her family. Enraged by Soo-mi's words, the stepmother vented her anger on Soo-yeon by leaving her to die. She also told Soo-mi that she will regret her actions one day. With this argument, Soo-mi leaves the house in anger, unaware of both her sister and her mother's fate. This incident traumatized Soo-mi, which resulted in her being placed in the mental hospital. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.